Joining us now, New York Congressman Richie Torres, member of the Financial Services Committee. Congressman Torres, thank you for being here. Let's start with the breaking news. Israel, Egypt, and the United States have reached a tentative agreement to let U.S. citizens leave Gaza via the Rafah crossing into Egypt. It's supposed to be happening right now, but NBC News has spoken to an American mother of three at the border who says it's still not open. Your reaction?
Look, every effort should be made to minimize casualties on both sides, both among Israelis and Palestinians. War's a tragedy, and no one should sanitize or deny the deep suffering that the war will bring to Israelis and Palestinians. But, we must not lose sight of the context. Israel did not start the war. The war was imposed upon Israel by the barbaric terrorism of Hamas. And so there's no doubt in my mind that Israel's committed to waging the defensive war in a manner that minimizes casualties, and the United States, Egypt, all the countries in the world should play their role in providing humanitarian assistance.
And your thoughts on the imminent ground invasion in Gaza? Are you concerned about the fact that a lot of the hostages we know that some have been brought into Gaza? Are you concerned about their safety, given the density of Gaza?
Look, I'm anxious because Israel is about to undertake the most complicated military operation in its history. There's a consensus or a near consensus that Israel has a right to defend itself. In order to defend itself, it needs to not only defeat, but entirely dismantle Hamas. And in order to dismantle Hamas, it has to launch a ground invasion. Launching a ground invasion in a densely populated urban center like Gaza, where Hamas often uses civilians as human shields, where Hamas hides military assets and civilian infrastructure, that's a nightmarishly complex situation that will likely lead to casualties, heavy casualties on both sides. And so this is going to be a painful situation. But Israel has concluded that if it allows Hamas to remain in power, it runs the risk of a much deadlier terrorist attack against its own people. And the purpose of a government is to protect its own people. So no one can begrudge Israel's right to defend itself.
Mm-hmm. Congressman, as I mentioned in the intro, you are a member of the House Financial Services Committee. One of the reports that have come out about the Hamas's attack is that they've been able to raise money through cryptocurrency. Can you give us some insight into that? And why cryptocurrency made it possible for them to raise money, a terrorist organization?
Well, my understanding is that it was an offshore deregulated exchange like Binance that facilitated the transfer of funds to Hamas. So those reports underscore the need for regulation. Back in April of 2023, I actually pressured the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, to prioritize enforcement actions against deregulated offshore exchanges, because those are the exchanges that carry the greatest risk of losing customer funds and engaging in criminality and money laundering. And then in June, the SEC did take action against Binance, which I think has the Hamas accounts that you're describing.
Mm-hmm. And Congressman, one more question for you. I mean, you are a member of the House of Representatives, one of the two chambers of Congress that doesn't have a Speaker of the House. And until Republicans agree on a House Speaker, Congress can't pass any aid to Israel. Where does the Republican conference go from here? Do you think, in the end, they are going to come to the Democratic caucus looking for votes for help?
Look, I have often said that if the House of Representatives, if the Republican House were a country, it would be a failed state. Right? It has nothing but incompetence and extremism and dysfunction. You have a Republican civil war. You had a Republican coup d'etat. It is crystal clear that Republicans have no ability to govern on their own without cooperation and bipartisanship from Congress. So the savior is Hakeem Jeffries, and we invite Republicans to partner with Hakeem Jeffries to restore stability and order to the House of Representatives in this moment of need.
In the last hour, Congressman Torres, we had Congresswoman Madeleine Dean on, and she had thoughts about the potential of Jim Jordan being the next Speaker of the House. As you can imagine, she is 100% against it. Do you have concerns about Congressman Jim Jordan being the next Speaker of the House?
I mean, I'm horrified by the thought of Jim Jordan. I mean, he's a creature of the far right, although the Republican Party has moved so far right that it's not even clear Jim Jordan represents the far right of the Republican Party. But it's, you know, the Republican Party is embarrassingly dysfunctional. It is at war with itself. It's incapable of governing in a moment of crisis. And we need real leaders like Hakeem Jeffries, who's going to bring calm leadership and stability to an institution that desperately needs it, and that's in a state of crisis.
Congressman Richie Torres of New York, thank you very much for coming on this morning.